Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ALECA Talks, where we meet with leaders of a sustainable future. I'm Serge, your host, aka the boring ESG guy, if you want to follow me on social media. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Chris Stenhouse, co-founder of Professional Bookkeeping Services, PBS for short, based in Melbourne, Australia. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much, Serge. I'm so happy to be here and to be part of this with you.
Cool, very cool. Nice to have you. Nice to see you again. So Chris has one of the more sordid histories as far as coming to this podcast. Despite never working as a bookkeeper himself, he became the co-owner of a bookkeeping business along with his partner, Leanne. But she brings, I think, 2 decades of industry experience, so they're covered on that front. He's got a background in IT systems, including time at Apple. Chris has helped build a fully remote, cloud-first business centered around curiosity, communication, innovation, and perhaps most importantly, something very dear to my heart, sustainability. Not just environmental sustainability, but creating work that's genuinely sustainable with the people doing it. Today we'll discuss Chris's journey into bookkeeping and why leading through curiosity, which we're going to hear a little bit about. We talked about it already on other calls with Chris, but we're going to talk about his leadership philosophy and how AI can reduce burnout, perhaps, rather than, people leaving or replacing people, why communication is becoming the biggest competitive advantage for professional service firms. I think that's important. And what small businesses should know as far as ESG and sustainability. Your ESG journey is just starting, I feel. But hey, let's get started, Chris. Before we dive into the whole AI sustainability leadership thing, I'd like to know more, and I'd like you to share some of your story with everyone today. Can you take us back to the beginning?
I sure can.
What did your career look like before PBS?
I've had a number of different careers and jobs in my time, but they've all centered around technology for the better part. And I mean, even when I was studying at university, I was studying a subject called multimedia systems, which is kind of a very broad IT subject where you do a little bit of coding, a little bit of web development, video editing, sound production, 3D design. It's kind of the jack of all trades of an IT course, and it's really good. It gave me a really good taste for what I liked, what I was good at, where I excelled, and some of the things that weren't necessarily for me, but it still gave me good exposure to them. And from there, I actually I got a job at Apple, and initially it started off as a retail job, but I very quickly was picked out to be one of the technicians. And then eventually, after a few years, I became the lead technician at one of the stores and oversaw the training, implementation of, when new computers or hardware or when anything was released, we had to make sure that the team knew what they were doing and how to fix it if something went wrong. So yeah, that's kind of where I've come from. And before Apple, before uni, I was actually working on an IT help desk. So yeah, I've always been around technology. Even before I was in a career, even before I was an adult, I was like my mum. My mum actually founded the company PBS in 1983, and so she used to have home offices where her and her team would come to do the work, and every once in a while she'd have to upgrade her computers, and the old ones went to me. And so from the age of probably 10, I was pulling apart computers and putting them back together. So when it comes to technology, I've lived and breathed it my whole life.
Wow. Okay, so your mom started, was it PBS, the Professional Bookkeeping Services?
Yeah,
So you come from a background. It wasn't just when you started with Leanne, it was actually, something seeded early by your mom.
it was. It was funny. It was funny when I first started working for Mum. It was 2016, and I remember approaching her and saying, "Hey, can I come and work for you?" And her initial response was, "Absolutely not. You will be an overhead. You don't know how to do bookkeeping. You're not an accountant. What are you going to do?" And I was like, "I'll figure something out."
Too
Yeah.
funny. Too funny. Yeah, you add no value to this business. Stay away.
Basically, yeah, basically. And then she got some external consulting advice, and they'd met me, and they're like, "You've got to hire him." And so that fast forward 2 years, 2018, mum retired, and myself and one of my mum's longest standing team members, we actually formed an equal 50-50 partnership because, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know how to do the bookkeeping. So we kind of came together. I could see a lot of opportunity for the industry in terms of it was very traditional bookkeeping. It was very old school, and that was actually my biggest shock when I joined the business. Those first 2 years, I couldn't believe how what the deficit was between the technology that I got to use and experience at Apple versus what I would say the typical small business owner would have access to. And so for me, I was like, had to learn again. I didn't have an endless budget. I couldn't just do things like the way I may have done them in the past. So yeah, it was a good learning experience, and it taught me a lot about small business and what's important.
Yeah, no doubt. You came from probably the top innovative technology driven company, Apple,
Mm,
right? And I'm curious, what experience do you think still influences you today? What would you say you took from being that?
mm.
And you grew at Apple. You grew from like almost what, a retail sales guy to the tech guy to the tech leader to the training guy
Mm,
at Apple.
mm.
So you went through all the ranks of Apple and you saw it all. What do you
Yeah.
think influences you still today from that time?
Well, uh, the first thing that jumps to mind, I think you're going to love this word, is efficiency. And when I joined, when I joined, when I joined PBS, Mum was supporting every single accounting package that was available. So I even remember on her marketing brochures that she had, all of the different logos of, QuickBooks, Reckon, Sage, Zero, Myob, anything. And there was FreshBooks. There's probably, I'd say, a dozen even back then that were fairly commonly used. Uh, and I just knew that you can't be an expert in all of that. And there's two examples that like I basically operate through, oh, that's like this sort of scenarios, right? So effectively metaphors that help me understand things. And when I thought back to my time at Apple, we had we had trainers that would basically train the customers on how to use the Apple apps. So you wouldn't get the trainers teaching you how to use other companies' software. It was always Apple software, and they got time to become experts in that. But then I thought back further than that, and I actually had, and look, if this is too much, I'm sorry, but I actually had a remote control speedboat when I was a kid, right? And
Okay.
I remember that I'll connect the dots on this one. I remember that if I drove it in a straight line, I'd get probably 20, 25 minutes. But if I was doing donuts in the water with it, I got 10 to 15 minutes. And what that like taught me was around every time you change directions, you chew up extra energy. If you can point yourself in the same way and go hard at that whatever that target is, you'll be much more efficient. And I've used that across the board as a metaphor for myself. So when I looked at what we were doing, one of the first things that we did in PBS after 2018 was move the whole entire client base moved on to one accounting package. And as far as how we collect the documents, so all of the tax invoices, the bills, everything, it's all collected through another piece of software, which we actually pay for and provide to our clients for free. Because if my team only have to use one software to get the documents and it all goes into the same type of accounting software, it means they can be more efficient. We can design singular workflows across the board. So for me, yeah, the efficiency was what I took from my time at Apple, but it was something that was, just intuitive to me, like things that I'd noticed, and you might not pay attention to them, but I did.
No doubt, coming in cold from somewhere like Apple. I always remember, was it Simon Sinek who had presented something to Apple, and he said, I went and worked at Google or something, and Google had this app which was awesome, and the Apple guy said, I bet I bet it was. And that's all Apple said was like, you know what? We are comfortable in our ecosystem, and to be distracted by what others are doing, that's not our system. So it really is a distraction. It really is inefficient. So I couldn't agree with you more. Although all the softwares look alike nowadays, they're all kind of duplicating each other, but the subtle differences are where you lose time, and you lose 10% here, 10% there. So I agree with that performance enhancement that you did at PBS. So obviously, you took over and it was 2018, and then you got hit like every small business owner. You got hit with COVID, man.
Yeah.
Um, Looking back now, how important, was it that you were coming in from this tech background, cloud-based, streamlining efficiency, working from home, leveraging a team? Tell me what happened in the first quarter 2020.
Well, we all went home. So at the time we were still a hybrid team. We had our onshore team were all in Melbourne, Victoria, and we had offshore team in the Philippines. And so we were already working towards having uh, online only sort of workloads. And just on that, in terms of when our first team member that we hired in the Philippines, uh, she she started in July 2017. So before Leanne and I even took over, she was on the team. So we were very lucky. We were very fortunate to have already started putting things in place that made lockdowns and working from home a lot less impactful as a business. And what's funny, we made the call. I received a phone call from an old uni friend on the Friday, and it made me think about what was coming the next week in terms of Melbourne and lockdowns. And on the Monday, I think it was Monday the 23rd of March 2020.
Yeah.
I had a new team member that was starting, and she got to the front door of the office, and I literally just handed her a computer to her and said, "Take this home." Um, so yeah, in terms of what we'd been doing, we moved our clients to Xero, and we'd already retired the physical office server. So my mum, when she was running it, she had an Exchange server that was a physical unit set up in the office. So we'd already moved our entire like client folder structure, all the file, everything was already in the cloud. So for us, moving into a work from home environment was as easy as just taking the computer, like hardware, to our respective homes, plugging it in, and away we go. So so that yeah, we were very, very lucky that we weren't impacted as some businesses were. And when I think back, one of the funny things that happened was we renewed our lease with our office for 2 years, like right at the start of COVID, just before COVID hit. I think it was around August 2019. I'm like, we'd already done 1 year, and we're like, oh, this office is great. We love it. you know? And then I'm like, oh, look at the cost savings if we get it for 2 years. So sign the contract. Oh, there we are for 2 years.
Murphy was alive and well on now, and oh man, you save money, but in reality, you didn't need it in the end.
Yeah. And
Crazy.
I went back into that office about 8 months after we'd all been working from home, and it was like stepping into a time capsule. Like I, I saw the post-it notes, all of the handwritten stuff, everything on the walls. I'm like, wow, this was our best thinking 8 months ago, apparently.
Yeah, I agree with that. That you mentioned the server, having a local server, and I grew up with that. Everybody had a server, and that's the only way to keep it protected and stuff. And it was like, man, to even mention it today, clients would say, never, I never want you to keep anything on that server, please. Put it on the cloud.
Mhm.
It's far safer in Microsoft Azure or Google, Amazon. It's far safer there than it is on your local server, which has zero protection in reality.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like stepping back in time. I agree with that. Um, I'd like to move forward now into, accounting. Really, you haven't, I mean, obviously you run a business, so you know how to do accounts and you know how to manage your own books in a way. But as a chartered accountant, you are not, right? So how do you can't personally jump in and solve client issues from a tax or chartered accountant point of view. How
Mm.
would you say you've built your leadership style around around being people that have to solve problems for their clients around accounting? What's your leadership style around that?
So my leadership style around that is identifying when there's a problem and then bringing other people in. So it's very much collaborative approach, my leadership style, because as you mentioned, I wasn't going to be able to really analyze what went wrong. A lot of the time, I see the outcome of something that may have gone wrong. So I'm like, okay, well, this didn't work. This is the outcome. How did we get here? And so I would then bring the people involved into that discussion and just slowly, methodically, like troubleshooting hardware, basically. Somewhere there's a system, and somewhere along the line, the system broke down, and I need to understand why. And so I would there's something I learned at Apple in terms of how to approach these sorts of situations. And the way that I was taught was always to seek to understand. So never jump to the next part, never make an assumption, never think you know what's happened. Always seek to understand and step through. Because if you do that, you're not going to put anyone on the defensive because you're not accusing them of anything. And two, it gives you the opportunity to really analyze each step in that process and figure out, okay, so no one gets up in the morning to go, oh, I'm going to muck up this process and really annoy everybody. No one does that, right? So there's no point coming at it with that sort of energy around, oh, and that doesn't help anybody. So seeking to understand really means asking questions and working through things methodically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, seek to understand. Be curious. Be curious. Get the lay of the land, and don't make assumptions. My goodness, we all make assumptions. Like there's an expression, I know enough to be dangerous, and that's an important expression. It's got a lot of layers to it, but knowing enough to be dangerous means you make assumptions, and those are very dangerous to make. So I like that curiosity. I like that leadership style. Um, Constantly asking questions, improving the way you communicate with your team. Do you think that leadership style transcends into the people you work with and then the clients? Do you think they kind of emulate that? Are you teaching, training, communicating that
Mm.
all your team should be working in the same manner with the clients?
Well, with the clients, or even when they come across a problem, maybe it's on a client file, but maybe the client's not even involved yet. And so when I'm having these meetings with my team and we've identified something that we need to improve upon or discuss, I I give them the why behind every question. So that they might give me a response to something, and I'll say, okay, great. So let me just make sure that I understand, what you've said here. If this is this, would you agree that this is X, Y, Z? Is that accurate? Yes. Okay. So does that mean then this? And I literally would I connect every single dot, and I feel that in doing so, I'm demonstrating like my team can take that away. I mean, it's not they're seeing the whole process that I work through, how I actually troubleshoot and triage a problem. They get exposure to that because I have to. I have to do it with them. I can't. I have no other option. So yeah, I think I don't have yeah, we don't have documented training on this process, but yeah, I think that they would definitely take something away from it.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to hear that. Often when people come in, like I've worked in big industry before, and someone, it's hard to understand that they're being genuine. You know, if you're trying to seek clarity and be curious, to genuinely seek to understand rather than being seen as you know something I don't. So
Yeah,
how do you keep people from being on the back foot? How do you really not showing your innocence, not showing your extremely naive, but
yeah.
showing that you're genuinely curious,
Mm.
and that you're not looking to accuse, or you're not looking to show that you know something else. How do
That's
you
a
balance that?
that's a big question. That's a big question. So I think one of the things that I had to let go of immediately, like instantly, was the idea of having any sort of ego around, having the answers. It's it's something that a lot of people find hard because you normally you do what you know. Normally you're doing what you know. And so for me, I could not be the go-to person with answers. I what that then led to for me was actually a shift of responsibility and empowerment, or ownership is probably another word. So my team know that they have ownership on the the process, the outcomes, and when I step in, it's not so much to then solve the problem, or it's me posing the question, how do we make this better? So we've got this negative outcome here that we don't want. How did we get here? So for me, it's yeah, it was hard. It was hard, especially being the lead technician and having the answers and not being able to do that. That meant that I had to actually put that responsibility back onto the team to actually solve those problems through guidance and discussion and a structured process that I would lead them through.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, it's ego. Often we carry this chip on our shoulder that, yeah, we're in a leadership position, or I'm the co-founder of the company. I got a lot at stake.
Mm,
So there's some insecurity that comes into that. Like a lot of people with ego are insecure, right? They don't want to be seen as vulnerable, but if you can take away that ego and try to solve something, how do we make it better for next time?
mm,
How do we not get into this position next time, or how do we make it more efficient? I like your efficiency story. So I guess it brought me to my next advice. You see a lot of leaders that get parachuted in to companies that maybe they've never worked in that industry. And often there's a big difference. And I've been reading a lot about the difference between a CEO and a COO, right? A
mm.
chief operating officer versus a chief executive officer. And it's two completely different roles. It's different. The one is a vision of where the company's heading. The other one is a day-to-day, almost firefighting, getting people to be efficient and getting the company to operate. So what would you give, as a sound bite to someone parachuting in as a CEO? of a company maybe that they don't know the industry that well?
Yeah. Well, I think don't pretend like you've got the answers, and make sure that it's really clear who's responsible for what outcomes. Because I think my job is really to guide the team and help them come to the solutions using their own expertise. I think that would be my soundbite there.
Cool. No, that sounds good. We'll use that. We always make little, shorts of the podcast, and I think that's a good one. So don't pretend you've got all the answers. I think that's important. Obviously, as a senior person, you've seen a lot, right? But maybe not this particular problem. You can certainly break it apart. And a lot of times good leaders can break apart the problem and try to focus on how to solve each little piece. Otherwise it's overwhelming at times. People come to you to firefight and it's overwhelming. They say, well,
Mm.
let's break it apart. Teach me each little piece. So that's kind of my style. Let's go forward to like the people and sustainability part, because you've got a team now, you've got a company based across Australia and in the Philippines. Um, let's talk about sustainability. It's not just, carbon emissions. I think you put people front row and center. Obviously on your balance sheet, employees is your probably biggest cost, right? So for you, sustainability begins with people. It's about designing your business and process such that you get the best out of them over the long term and be very energy efficient, people efficient. That perspective is obviously one of your guiding principles over there at PBS. Can you explain what sustainability means for you personally and the principles of PBS?
Yes, I can. So the first thing that comes to me here is that the traditional bookkeeping company used to, whether it was a single person that was like as a sole trader offering their service and their time, or even when I think back to how my mum used to run the company, she had a team of bookkeepers, and the bookkeeper, any of them, they would have their own clients. And for that client, they would be doing the bookkeeping, they'd be doing the payroll, like, and all of the reporting in between. Now, what's happened is that in Australia, our compliance requirements are getting more and more complex. And so from a sustainability piece, it's unrealistic in my opinion, and my business partner's opinion, to expect one person to be a specialist and up to date with every single aspect of Australian ATO and State Revenue Office compliance. So what we've done is we've actually separated our roles. So we've got teams now, and as in teams of people, and within the teams we have a team leader, we have a payroll officer, and we have bookkeeping specialists. So rather than putting the expectation on one person to know everything, we've created areas of specialty within the teams so that they can really excel in whatever area they're working in.
Okay. Okay.
That's the
So that's
that's the first part to sustainability that hits the closest to home right now. But then going further than that, when we are looking at our own processes, even if it is for one of the specialists in our team, or if we're looking at it because we're working with the client, uh, generally our solutions are a hybrid sort of solution. So my team will be doing part of it, and then on my client side, they will have maybe an admin team, or there is definitely a connection there between the processes. And so wherever the processes are going to be impacting people, we look at what that process involves, how long it takes, how repetitive it is, and what we're looking for is inefficiency and the potential for burnout. And then once we identify that, we look at what we can do or put in place, whether it's, software technology or rethinking the problem. Maybe we've overthought it, and we just need to go back to the drawing board and go, what are we actually trying to achieve here, and how can we do that better? So sustainability is really that human factor for us, and it's actually one of our core values.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. You mentioned burnout. A lot of times, even in our industry, consulting or other services as professionals, there's
Mm.
so many things that fall on your shoulders, and that remit, that expanding remit of an
Mm.
individual to know too many things and to be pulled in too many directions, that uncertainty can often uh, lead to decision paralysis, to inefficiency. If
Yeah.
you have to pick up and stay relevant in too many tax, HR, payroll, compliance, sustainability, there's just too much. There's too much. And how would you say that the modern day bookkeeper,
Mm.
whether it's a mom and pop shop, sort of like what your mom started, or even an SME like what you have now, would you say AI is the way to go with a lot of these roles, especially if you're a small team? If you're a small team, you can't have specialists and everything, but
Mm.
your client needs help. How do you provide that level of service without burning out? Would you say AI is a good thing in this niche?
Yes, it depends how you use it. I think it depends how you use it. But the simple answer is yes. It is a good thing. And maybe just before we jump into this topic, there's one other key part about the human sustainability. Um, I've interviewed a lot of bookkeepers over the years, and one of the things that I've noticed is that it's a pretty common story to hear a bookkeeper who's been in the industry for, let's say, 2 to 3 decades, to say, "Oh, I've downsized my bookkeeping company because I was doing 60, 70, 80 hours. I was working every weekend." Uh, and that's the other reason that we created the areas of specialty within our teams. It reduces the risk on our clients, and it also means that we can cover leave. So one of two things would happen. You'd either, just talking to bookkeepers, you'd either hear that they don't take holidays because they care too much about their clients, or they took a holiday and the client's payroll, didn't go through properly. So that is the other reason that we rethought how to deliver bookkeeping and payroll. Uh, but yes, going into AI, there's certain quality assurance checks. There's quality assurance checks, which they might take 10 minutes, they might take 2 hours, depending on the size of the client. And let's say that you're doing that on a monthly basis for 100 clients. That is something that is going to be super repetitive. And so that is an opportunity where AI may be able to take some of that legwork out of that, which then frees up my team to focus more on the higher level work and the conversations and the relationships with their clients. So yeah, AI I think definitely has a place. I think when AI first kind of hit the market and was being spoken about, I think a lot of the talk was around using AI to completely automate bookkeeping, and
Yeah.
and that's not the only professional service where that line of thought was prevalent. Um, but I don't see it as automating everything in terms of bookkeeping, especially not in the next few years. But I can definitely see where it can take out a lot of those repetitive tasks that we do have to do.
Okay, I like that. We had another conversation on one of the other ALECA talks as well, where automation, repetitive tasks, freeing up your time. You mentioned the 80 hours a week. Yeah, they care about their clients. They're doing repetitive tasks. They're making sure the quality assurance steps. These are all things that you could automate and have a red flag if something doesn't fit what you're looking for, training AI agents, agentic AI. It's out there. It's fairly easy to do. So I buy into that completely. You talked about how people work 80 hours a week and are looking to come work with you and try to take some time off, maybe try to enjoy life. Because yeah, I see it even with our own bookkeepers here. They're working weekends. They're sending me messages in the middle of the night because
Mm,
they're doing, they have 200 clients and they need to do 200 every month. It's tough. Uh,
mm.
so I like the fact that maybe your PBS is trying to break the mold a little bit in that sense. Um, if you
Yeah.
were to look at your communication and how you're emphasizing that you now have experts and you're communicating a bit more clearly amongst your clients, do you think communication amongst professional services is changing? Do you think, from 10 years ago to today, how we communicate with clients, has it evolved in a
Mm.
way?
Y Yeah, so the business climate, at least in Australia right now, is one of the toughest environments, as it's been for probably the last 2 decades, and whilst I haven't been in the business for the last 2 decades, this is something that I've heard from my business partner, Leanne, and she's been looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of accounting files during that time. So that's where that statement is coming from. Uh, I think that businesses were able to get away with pricing for the service to be delivered and just managing the communication as part of that. I think as times or as the margins are getting tighter, I think businesses are being forced to find ways to deliver more. And I feel, and this is just based on my own personal experience, I feel that potentially some service-based industries haven't factored communication into their pricing well enough. And and yeah, I've got a few examples where I was dealing with an insurance broker and we were renewing our annual insurances. And they sent me an email and there was a term in there which I didn't understand. And for me, it's just natural to ask the question now. I didn't feel ignorant or anything like that. It's just there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, right? And so I had to call him and ask him to explain like what does that really mean? And then there was a few follow-up questions. I I I just and yeah, that's just one example. I've I've had this experience across, lots, and I find when we also take on new clients, and part of the first 6 months is really around financial literacy, that's kind of like the big focus. Other than, you know, fixing anything that needs fixing and implementation and all of that stuff. It's really around finding out, where they're at, their financial education and literacy. And it's so funny how often they say, "Why has no one ever told us that that's what that means?" And it's like, well, I don't know, because you kind of need to know what that means in order to make the decisions once you see the reports. So it's kind of important. So yeah, yeah, it's based on my own experience. It's based on then also what I see with our clients when they come on board. I just think that communication's kind of we're moving very quickly now, and if we don't keep up the communication, I think we could run into a problem. I think you have to focus on that if you want to be successful in the service, definitely in the service-based industries right now.
I couldn't agree more. That communication piece, with the margins coming down, you want to move quickly. You want to do the technical work and move on to the next client because the margins are so slim. If you're booking your own time 8 hours a month
Mm.
to work with a client or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's 4 questions and 2 meetings, then all of a sudden it's like, well, do you invest that time to bring them up the financial literacy or the technical literacy, or
Yeah.
do you just say you move on? Do you upset them and lose the client?
I I
It,
I
it
mean,
it's It's a challenge.
how sad would it be if you did all the work and you did a good job and you gave it to the client and they still made the wrong decision because they didn't understand what you gave them? How sad would
Yeah,
that scenario
yeah,
be?
that is sad. That is sad. That is just you didn't communicate it properly and you didn't invest enough time.
Mm,
I agree. I agree. So getting a little further on, then a little something closer to Aleka's heart here. If um if you look at those conversations that you're having now with clients, do they incorporate ESG into any of their business
mm,
forecasts or any of the reporting that they do? I know we had this conversation before, Chris.
yeah.
When you hear the term ESG, there's three parts. There's the environmental, social, and governance piece. But
Mm.
what about in your business? How would you implement ESG reporting in your business?
That's a good question. Uh, that's a good question. And ESG wasn't even on my radar until you and I started talking.
Till we started talking. Well, for you, it's probably G. G is kind of important,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You've got a lot of client data. Oh, sorry, I'm answering it for you,
No,
but
no, no,
go
yeah. No,
ahead,
no, no,
Chris.
yeah. No, 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 no. So the social and the governance is definitely something that I was working on without realizing that there was a whole thing about ESG. And so, yeah, in terms of our software and security and the platforms we use, uh, we 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 go to great lengths, exceptional lengths, to ensure the confidentiality and security of our clients' financial data. Uh, in small business, yeah, in small business, your financials, for most business owners, they're very confidential. There's very few that are like, oh yeah, here, have a look at this. It's held very close to the chest. And so one of the changes that we made this year, actually, we moved to a new IT provider who was offering a much more holistic and a higher level of service. That was the key part. They explained what was going on to me, and security. But if my team want to check their emails or log into one of our, we use single sign on, and we're so we've got all of that set up. If they want to log into our payroll system, if they want to log into their emails or any of the software that we've got the single sign on to, even if they've got their password, they can't get in unless they're on the company owned computer asset.
Okay.
So if they're there's a further step that we're going to take after this, but yeah, even if their password was compromised, or if there was a phishing email, for example, and the token was stolen, anything like that, it wouldn't actually matter because those platforms only work on those pieces of hardware. So it would take. Now it's not impossible. Obviously, if the computer was then compromised, like if someone took the computer, okay. So there's always a way to break through security, but I think the important thing is understanding what those ways are and then plugging the holes every time you can with the next layer of security. So
And
governance,
the
or
question is, Chris, are they all Apple computers?
do you know what? Uh, Only mine is. So so it
Just a
as
dig.
much.
That was just
I
a
know
dig,
it's not a main thing, but from a managed hardware point of view, it's much easier for my IT company to manage Microsoft based or Windows based hardware. They can lock it down. They can do a lot more on it. And they said to me, they're like, maybe next time you update yours, you can go back to Windows. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. And
You
they
bet, you bet. You can boot your Apple up in Windows, right? You can have a dual boot system.
I
Um,
can.
I had to laugh. I was dealing with a Silicon Valley company, a software company out of Silicon Valley. They all showed up with these beautiful, brand new, high-end Apples,
Yeah.
and they would boot. They would start the computer as a Windows computer, and I'm like, does your software even run on Apple? He goes, no, our software doesn't run on Apple, but you can't walk around Silicon Valley with a high-end gaming computer, which is what they would need to run their software. They said, we got to look cool when we're in the coffee shop. It's got to be an Apple. So I feel for you. Hey, it's been great. If you were to give me one last soundbite for looking back, what you're most proud of, since when you took over with your mom, 2018 with Leanne, what are you most proud of? I guess it's been a few years. How would you sum it up
Well,
so far?
I'm proud that I'm still here. It's
There you go. Hey, SMEs, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees when you start a business.
yeah, no, I'm proud that I'm still here. I'm proud of how we have, um, not strategically, but, uh, how we have rebuilt every single component of the business that Leanne and I purchased from mum. Up until I think March this year, what I used to say to people was that we'd rebuilt the company from the ground up, and the only thing left is the logo. But I can't even say that anymore. So we went through a rebranding, or a brand refresh, still the same company name, but it was a brand refresh, and now we have a new logo. So the only thing left from the original company, so the completely new team, processes, systems, everything, the only thing left is the original logo color. So the blue color that you see in our logo
Yeah,
is from
I'm looking at it here.
1983. That's the only thing left. So I'm proud of how we've uh, bucked the system, so to speak. We've questioned the status quo, uh, and it's really set us apart because we do things very differently to a lot of other bookkeeping companies, and that's because we've questioned everything. I mean, I had to, and I brought, and with Leanne, we've gone on that journey together, and we've just gone, how do we make this better? What needs to change? What are the assumptions in our industry that other bookkeeping companies have gone, oh, well, I have to do that because it's like, well, do we? And why? Who says?
Okay, I agree. I agree that's a great one. You've molded, you've reshaped, you've challenged the status quo. These are all great things. I thank you, Chris. We've explored your journey from Apple and IT, from sales, retail, all the way through to a business owner. And I'm happy you're still here as well, because it's good to hear a success story once in a while. I like your curiosity in the leadership and the strength and weaknesses that brings, and I think that's a great way to run a business, is to be curious and to understand why. Your sustainability view with people, that's the biggest focus. It's not all about the E or the S, or the G. In this case, your S is really the people centered. And I like that. There's an advantage to that in the professional service firms where you can allow people to take time off. You've got the systems in place to let people be human beings. You're embracing AI in a way to remove mundane tasks and maybe let them be more human. Increase the communication between the peer to peer, increase communication to the client,
Yeah.
and remove some of that burden of mundane tasks. Well, I tell you now, Chris, thank you for joining us on ALECA Talks.
Thank you so much
You
for having me, Serge. It's been great.
All right. You've been great. I appreciate it. And I thank everyone for listening to ALECA Talks. It's been great today with Chris Stenhouse from PBS. And we look forward to having you on ALECA Talks again someday. But until then, please be a leader for a sustainable future. Ciao for
Thank you.
now.
Thank you.